Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We're excited to share the English translated interview with the President of Ukraine. He dives into some shocking details you won't want to miss.
Thank you sincerely for the opportunity to talk with you and our viewers. Well then, a sufficiently long business trip with pauses during which the victory plan was presented, part of which is the strengthening of our fighters and the strengthening of our army, which is feedback. I think that is not the case. I would start with the first presentation, which was the United States of America. The feedback was almost immediate. Our team went there with the Chief of the General Staff, Barhilevich, and Vice Prime Minister Stefanishina. We worked on issues regarding NATO, as well as on the invitation to NATO, and on strengthening our army now, which is point 2 of the victory plan. I am waiting for feedback. The White House. Team in Ukraine. We are waiting, and she will be here soon with some answers. I had a talk with the US President. We received a package worth $500 million. It was also agreed that this is part of the same plan, and that we will be receiving packages very quickly, possibly once every 2 to 3 weeks, which will strengthen our army. We will not discuss the details because I do not have the right to do so, but you will see the details later. The packages will be, I think, large, ranging from $500 million to $750 million. And I think it will be a fairly quick process. It is very important for us that in the coming months, which is what the victory plan is aimed at, we maximize the strengthening of Ukraine in October and December. This concerns the United States of America. There are also quite complex issues that depend on them. This is an invitation to NATO. We are working on it. Then I had meetings with representatives from the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others, with France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom. We had a very positive meeting with France. Again, part of the plan is to strengthen the brigade is gaining capabilities thanks to reserves equipped with quality military equipment. And here the Minister of Defense was together with the President of France. They were there where our brigade is being equipped and trained in France. By the end of November, the brigade will be in Ukraine, ahead of all other countries. France is leading in this direction, particularly in strengthening and equipping. I had a very good conversation with the President of France. I believe that France will support Ukraine's NATO membership. Emmanuel will personally do this, and I think he will work with other partners on whom a positive decision on this point depends. The issue regarding deterrence packages and long-range missiles against the enemy remains complicated, and despite the fact that I raise this issue that we have the right, a full right, both moral and legal, to defend ourselves and use appropriate weapons if Russia does not want to end the war. We can already partially use such weapons before winter or during winter, when we are almost officially threatened with blackouts, etc. Yes, therefore, I believe that we have every right to this, despite that. This issue is undoubtedly complex. It is important that the countries and entities involved approach this matter differently. And this is indeed extremely important because there are countries that view this positively. And since this is a risky issue, if you are given a corresponding package of very strong missiles, then each of these countries is the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy. It is clear that no one wants to take risks alone. And so those countries among these 5 that have already worked very hard are now on our side regarding this matter. It is important that they start working and helping me significantly in the dialogue with partners so that the response is positive, although this is a complex issue. Unfortunately, the leading countries have not yet rid themselves of the desire to not completely close the door on the Russian Federation. In my opinion, this is my impression. Nevertheless, the visit was productive. In Italy, and then with Germany, there are, of course, questions about long-range weapons. This is their most painful issue, and it has been so before. I believe that the question we have discussed a lot is about Ukraine's future in NATO. For me, Germany's position is very important. It is important because we are indeed closer to NATO and the United States than we have ever been. I believe that we are closer, much closer. Also, I think there have been meetings with Balkan countries, important meetings, because they understand even more than the Baltic states. They firmly believe that if Ukraine does not endure, we will strongly unite all Balkan states here together. Those who do not have such a strong political alliance among themselves due to history and the wars they have had. This Ukraine-Balkans format effectively unites Balkan countries. They now see that they are at risk if Ukraine does not withstand, at risk. Not only the Baltics are at high risk, because Russia has influence there.
Mr. President, considering the complex and positive reactions you mentioned, how will the plan be further developed? Do you see room for changes, or are you ready to adjust any positions?
Indeed, yesterday I presented this plan to the leaders of the European Union. I presented it to everyone. Although the strengthening of Ukraine does not depend on everyone, as you know, there is skepticism in some states. However, I presented to everyone that it is very important for us to maintain the unity of the European Union, and I am open, absolutely. For example, yesterday we talked, the leaders talked, there was time to communicate. 18 countries shared their thoughts in our dialogue. They were there and they want to strengthen Ukraine in some ways. And I said, yes, if it's about strengthening, how can we be against it? For example, the sanctions policy that should be reflected, which should be detailed and realistic. Everyone indeed fully acknowledges that the sanctions policy, which was applied due to the Russian crime against the economy of Russia, everyone absolutely understands that it is not yet very complete, that it is very effective. But indeed, not enough to significantly reduce Russia's overall military defense spending or budget. That is, it does not impact the GDP of the Russian Federation in such a way that Russia and its allied countries can circumvent it. A lot of this sanctions package, undoubtedly, it has an impact. These sanctions, undoubtedly. I am glad that both President Michel and President von der Leyen are completely 100% on our side. I am truly and deeply glad that we have indeed been able to build over these last years such harmony and such 100% support from the European Union and from the leadership. And they understand that the sanctions are working, but there is a need to strengthen.
Mr. President, there is a rule. When you criticize, it should be reasonable. And constructive criticism is when you then offer an alternative, the West. We see North Korea. Troops are present. Information is available. The triad, China, RF, North Korea, gone beyond the war against Ukraine. What does the West offer? What does the alliance offer, given the rather restrained reaction, seeing the first point of the invitation to NATO, and what do they propose? What is their plan for victory, and what path do they see for ending the war?
Thank you for the question. First of all, you know, and the peace formula. And the peace summit, which was proposed 2 years ago, this is not just our way of ending the war. We must understand our steps as a means to strengthen ourselves before. Diplomacy before the upcoming peace summit is this victory plan to exclusively strengthen Ukraine. This is not just happening for no reason. This is all an informational and ideological space. If Ukraine or its allies do not fill it, if we do not fill it, everything will be totally filled with proposals from the Russian Federation or its allies, or even countries that are simply unacceptable. What will happen to Ukraine afterwards, because we are very far apart. I'm not even talking about distance, but about economies and about the future. And that is why I believe that any passivity in this direction, diplomatically, will lead to Russia simply uniting countries around its ideas, which they are firing like bullets through various nations. Excuse me. And it seems to me that this is very dangerous. So you are right, and many countries of the United West, they absolutely understand all of this. They absolutely understand the total influence that Russian information policy has in the world, in the global South, and in Europe. You can see what is happening with the politics of Europe, how many parties are emerging with a pro-Russian direction. That is, Russia is working very hard, lobbying both politicians and information platforms. And they understand that Ukraine is fighting. The victory plan today is a new wave. After the Kursk operation, which stopped Russia like a wave, their information policy, claiming they are winning, which was already everywhere, has launched such a trend. The Kursk operation halted this wave, and distrust in the information spread by Russia returned. Unfortunately, they are listened to, unfortunately. As you know how political leaders are, Ukraine is right. Ukraine is indeed a victim in this war, and Russia remains the aggressor. However, they recently said that they are defending their population again. Honestly, it is sad that after almost 3 years of ongoing war, these narratives still have such perception among some individual politicians. Therefore, it is very important that not only a wave be created, but also that it brings tangible results. The Kursk operation brought about this result. Ukraine has been believed in once again. They have questioned Russia's narratives, suggesting we might be losing the war. And then, history follows suit. What do you propose? Again, here lies your victory plan. Why exactly do we need a victory plan? Where precisely can one find this peace summit? Here stands our victory plan, designed specifically to strengthen us and compel Russia into sitting at the negotiating table with all partners, or perhaps just some representatives present at said summit. Because it is so simple for Russia. If Europe is divided, a divided world. If the world is weak, Russia will not have anything to negotiate about, because it wants to negotiate with an ultimatum. Nothing has changed in this coordinate system. Therefore, the victory plan is very important for this as well.
The first point. Some reps of the West criticize it. There is still no unified position. But what do these critics propose instead? What should be the path to end the war? What is the guarantee?
There are no other guarantees. They have no alternative that our side has proposed. There simply is none. So they might tell you about a frozen conflict. Let's stop now. Okay. The question is, what will happen the day after tomorrow? Why, when he gathers his strength again, I mean literally Putin, will there not be a complete occupation of Ukraine, or perhaps an attempt to repeat 2022? Who guarantees, and here no one raises their hand. No one guarantees anything after. After Normandy, Emmanuel is sitting and he says, yesterday we were sitting, I don't want to say who, but I was skeptical about the plan. He says, I was at Normandy, we sat together. He gave us his word that we would have peaceful negotiations and that there would be a ceasefire. Reality. Indeed, no one will certainly raise the issue of using powerful weapons. What will happen is a ceasefire, and there will be an exchange of. And he said, but we can no longer trust just the words of this side. They have not fulfilled anything. And so everyone understands that no one really believes in this, and simply an umbrella will no longer protect any of us. And let's have a serious umbrella, serious security guarantees. What is the alternative to NATO? Please tell me. And my argument regarding the Budapest Memorandum is that we gave up the appropriate weapons and that we should have exchanged weapons for NATO. Ukraine should have given up nuclear weapons for NATO and EU membership, not for the Budapest Memorandum. Security is diverse, as you can see, including grain corridors and financial support. Security is not only military, it is also economic. Economic security is an open market, a large market, the largest EU. We must be equal members of the EU. So when we talk about security guarantees, can we offer what works? What works? That's all.
I echo your words about NATO's nuclear weapons. Natalia Ostrovska, 1+1 TSN. Yesterday in Brussels, you revealed some details about the conversations with Trump. There, we mentioned nuclear weapons and NATO. Bild has already written about how much time we will need to create the first bomb. And some experts have noted that our conversations with allies are taking on an ultimatum-like character. Can you tell me who this is? Which of the international partners called first, after your statement yesterday about nuclear weapons, mentioning nuclear weapons, and did they understand you correctly? Regarding NATO membership, I have a clarification. If this were to happen tomorrow, what if the countries did not sign the invitation? You already mentioned that there are problems with Germany. What arguments does it have?
As for nuclear weapons, firstly, we did not intend to create any threat to the world or to develop any nuclear arsenal. I want us to understand that from some media platforms, this was a distortion of information. And therefore, I want us to be understood very correctly. I am absolutely convinced that Ukraine should indeed be in NATO, without a doubt. And the argument is that at the time of the Budapest Memorandum, we gave up nuclear weapons and were guaranteed the territorial integrity of Ukraine. This is what we are talking about. We are talking about the fact that if Ukraine had not given up its nuclear weapons, it would have had the same protection as other nuclear states. If you are not in NATO, NATO is better. We are a peaceful state. NATO is better. Today, more than any type of weapon, especially such a threatening one. Right? But we received nothing for it. And I say, nothing is stated clearly enough, because what we received, this piece of paper, has been violated. And those countries that did not violate it in any way, which are the guarantors and signatories of the Budapest Memorandum, they failed to stop Russia in any significant manner, because the violation occurred back in 2014. There was an occupation of part of our territories. These partners of a nuclear state in the world who guaranteed our territorial integrity did not stop Russia. Moreover, they did not push Putin back to his territory and did not put an end to this. This is what I am talking about. Therefore, as of today, if you look at all the countries in the world where there are no wars, these are either NATO countries or countries that have corresponding strong, dangerous weapons. And Ukraine has received neither the first nor the second. No, And that is why when we say, this is what I argued about. And with partners, and in the United States, as you mentioned yesterday, I don't want to be misinterpreted. I just said that Ukraine gave up everything and indeed received nothing in genuine protection. We did not receive anything. Therefore, I say that of what is on the table today, what is real, is NATO among these 2 points.
Who will not sign Ukraine's invitation?
I do not see serious risks in the invitation. I believe those who will not sign it. He still wants to leave room for dialogue with Russia. In my opinion, that is the case.
Mr. President, if we do not reach a consensus on our NATO admissions, is there a plan B, perhaps something similar to how America collaborates with Israel regarding its defense? This is the first question. The victory plan in many points still depends on our Western partner countries. And if we give them such levers of influence, will this not later affect our leadership in decision-making? Will it not happen that they make some decision without our agreement, whether we agree or cooperate with them? What decision? They decide on negotiations on borders and many other points.
If they do not help you, it puts you in a challenging situation. Therefore, today they are helping, and you should treat them as partners, not as senior partners, not as the most important ones, nor as those who are forcing you, but at least as equals. You cannot just take help and, be outside of the dialogue. That is simply dishonest and wrong in any way. Regarding the first part, everything can change after the elections. And when we discuss what other plans might be, the situation is such that the main donor in supporting Ukraine is the United States. And if their policy after the elections, which is not too far off, in the near future, after November 5th, if the policy of the United States changes, then these changes are what they are, as we all know. Plan B, that is, the policy of the United States itself will influence the development of this war or the development of its conclusion. And here, no one can tell you how it will be due to the US election. Period. Statements may vary. Many things can be said in support of Ukraine, while some may be said against supporting Ukraine. And how it will be after, no one knows. Because today they are not fighting for Ukraine, but they are fighting for their elections, which is fair for their state. Not very much for us. We believe that we must remain in focus. We are here, citizens of Ukraine, because we are at war. And there the mood is, it is clear that in America, elections are their own war. Yes, without bullets, but still a war. And there, people take certain steps, make certain statements, and use certain words that can sometimes even lead to explosions in Ukraine, in Ukrainian society. But for them, this is politics, unfortunately. We feel very much what life is like, and it hurts a lot because of the war. And they now have their own state in the region of their own, which is significant. And today, they have elections, and for them, it is a choice of America's course. For them, it is not just a choice of a person. And this is their choice of development, their subsequent international policy, their influence, of close ties or not so close with Europe, their support, or not so strong for NATO. You understand, right? I mean, they have their own challenges. Certainly our task is to do everything to ensure that Ukraine is not forgotten there and that we remain a priority. And that is exactly what I am doing. Because if we didn't do this, they certainly have sufficiently enough internal challenges, and indeed with Russia's help, to forget to forget information-wise what is happening in Ukraine.
But we will indeed make all the main decisions in dialogue, and it cannot be such that they sway us towards any particular thought.
This is wrong, unfair, it will not happen. And if we are pushed in any direction, you will all know about it.
The plan for victory, if you look at it, is essentially a pragmatic list of reasons why the West should help us. This is not just a very abstract struggle for democracy for many countries, light against darkness, but also a concrete struggle for security in Europe, for example, for the wealth of Ukraine's subsoil and natural resources. In this regard, there have been no commitments from Ukraine articulated. What did you discuss with the partners? You told us this, and this 5 points, and we...
And these are additional reasons, as you have noted, carefully listed by you in the victory plan, which we are currently facing, and challenges if partners do not provide support, which I believe prolongs Ukraine's strengthening and therefore prolongs the end of this war. In terms of victory, it is strongly emphasized, directly and without unnecessary words, that Ukraine needs to be very strong, and then, not forcibly, but in dialogue, I think, please, if we have an invitation, we have the appropriate weapons. And even if there is positive support for this plan from everyone, that is already a step forward. You are already in a different situation. And when you talk on one diplomatic platform or another with the Russians, including because partners see them everywhere, we are not against it. We tell them, what do you want us to discuss with the Russians? So empower us so that we sit equally and not just have a chair somewhere on the side. And how? Well, give the invitation and provide the weapons, etc. And they should know what is the positive aspect of this plan. It is not behind the scenes. He is very direct. He expects that the Russians should know that you are giving this to us. They should know that we will use it if they do not want to end the war. Our society must know, our brave soldier on the front line must know, that he is not just sitting in a trench and courageously giving his life. There are those who support him, and that he is indeed fighting for his children to be in a state that undoubtedly, absolutely, definitely has no prospects. Once again, no prospects, but for the state of his children. There is definitely protection, NATO, EU, security guarantees, strong army. No 20,000, 50,000 or whatever someone is saying, an ultimatum, what army, in my opinion? No, here you go please, a strong country with protection. Then the negotiations will be different. Then they can't just tell you that if this is not there tomorrow, you won't be there the day after. No one will say that to you. Because there is an answer which, and it is already focused in Ukraine, a package of deterrence, appropriate weapons, the necessary number of military personnel and partners.
If allowed, I will clarify, while we have not deviated from this plan, you say it is open and the Russians see it the same way, but there are secret additions. Who will you not show them to? Because there are some countries that support Russia, or they are neutral, which is a plus for Russia.
Here, I would say there are two stages. Applications are open today and are provided to those countries that specifically have those application points to strengthen Ukraine. If in a state, in one or another state, even among our close partners, if they do not have what it takes to strengthen us, then why provide the application? We trust them, but for what purpose? There are some states, and thankfully not many, that want to see the applications, but have not helped Ukraine in any way during the war. So why should they want to see this? What do they need to see, for example, a closed application about weapons, if they are against strengthening Ukraine with arms? Nonsense. But they have a plan, just not with applications. Here is for whom the applications are. This is the first stage. Stage 2 is when, if these countries are ready to support us and strengthen us, I have no objection to this application being open to everyone. I support our people seeing what is happening there, and for the Russians to see what is happening there. It will be an equal negotiation. Levels. Because their society will know an attack on our energy sector and a blackout, this will not just be a response later. There will be an attack on their energy sector and there will be a blackout. And then there are different weights of diplomacy. But I constantly emphasize what is the difference, they ask. And I answer you what the difference is between us. The difference is that we say we will apply this package. Only if the Russians perhaps sit down and end this war, then maybe, just maybe.
I would like to ask you in more specific detail about those few points that turned out to be new to the general public. That is, it specifically refers to the joint development of rare minerals with allies or Ukrainian military forces protecting other European states. That is, we want to show that we are creating added value for our allies in the future. Can you explain your logic for why you decided to emphasize this?
Added value? Once, absolutely correct. A different story. The minerals that Russia has already seized from our territories since 2014. The cost is quite high. Here you have the coal shortage and many other things. And now they are already approaching our other minerals. This is funding. And for our partners, they are still buying it somewhere. They are still investing money somewhere. Let's not talk specifically, but some states that had uranium developments, etc., have been pushed out of the territory of the African Union, the African continent, by Russia. That is, Russia wants to control the relevant minerals and natural resources, etc. And for them, this is indeed a chance. And here it is in Europe for us. Do we want tomorrow for Russia to seize this part of our territories? And for all of this to go to Russia, to Iran, maybe to China, North Korea? We do not know what Russia is agreeing to with them when it receives something from them today. So we know that they are constantly promising them something. They are already giving away cheap energy resources. We know this. And what else will they issue? In the areas where they have occupied our territories since 2014, you know? They have destroyed all the factories. That is their approach. For partners, it is an opportunity. For partners, it is the protection of Europe. For partners in the United States, it is not about strengthening the protection of these minerals, nor is it about empowering the allies of the Russian Federation with these resources and this money. And for them, this is an investment. And here we support this, please. Then also the one who guarantees our security today through points of victory. Please, if you support all of this, earn profits together with us and join us in this journey. This is not open to everyone, but open to relevant partners. Let's invest together, put in money, and this will work towards strengthening these states. First and foremost, this is the European Union. We are not interested in strengthening the European Union as we are future members of the EU. This is roughly how it looks. As for the fifth point, it is in essence simply put. This point is liked, it seems to me, indeed, by Republicans for the most part. Well, yes. And the Democrats perceive this as well. But it seems to me that there is a continent. There are military forces of the United States in the territory of the European Union. And it is clear that we will have a large army after the war. And that is a fact. And it is. And indeed, there are people who have come to the war to defend Ukraine. There are those who came to defend Ukraine having different professions. Some of them will return to their profession, while others will want to be military personnel. Many people have changed their lives, and I believe that people have gained combat experience, primarily and fundamentally. Some of them had training as part of extensive assault training. But generally speaking, for the most part, all these military personnel have two things. They have experience in using assault techniques and comprehensive, and secondly, they are not afraid of the Russians, which is extremely important and significant because absolutely no one knows how NATO representatives will react in the event of border crossings by the Russian Federation into other NATO countries. No one knows. And this is crucial because this is indeed a war, and there has been no experience, and a challenging one. Well, not for everyone, but many have experience in a variety of different wars and conflicts, but not in this specific kind of war and military engagement. And so our people, our military, and here we are talking about tens of thousands, if not more, maybe hundreds, could be, if they choose this path. People really like this because, for example, the countries such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have a very positive attitude towards it. They are satisfied and afraid of the Russian Federation, and it's clear why. We all see the face of modern Russia, and that is why they want our military to protect their borders. You mentioned lithium, Vuhledar, and the Kurakiv direction. This is indeed the territory where there are, in particular, lithium deposits.
Vuhledar has been captured in the Kurakiv direction. It seems they are deploying all mechanized equipment to break through. And it is possible that they plan to launch not Russian extraction companies there, but rather to settle with China using these territories. And if we move into business, as you said, the interests of the state and other countries are oriented towards their voters, and they tend to stray from these human values. That human life is the highest value. So, how can we be interesting to NATO? What could their interest be? How can we strengthen NATO as a country?
No one wants to fight. In the world, no one wants to fight. There is no such thing as everyone being ready. No one in NATO countries knows for sure what will happen if there is a full-scale war. For example, on the territory of the European continent, in the territory of one of the NATO member states. How will NATO countries act, God willing, together? But no one knows, because there is public support in some states, while in others there is none. And this indicates that there will be difficulties. If there is a war in one NATO territory or another, what will happen? There are questions regarding this. But in case it will be a world war, without Ukraine, it is 100% a world war. Secondly, partners really appreciate our experience. They are indeed very interested in the use of their weapons by our guys. They are studying this experience, and we are welcoming them here. This information is open to them for those partners who have provided the relevant weapons. They are very satisfied. There is a lot that is new for them because we have experience in which of this technology truly proves itself on the battlefield and which does not. And this affects, you understand, the funding for the partners. They are investing in the production of various NATO weapons. Now, correctly, they are not using them. They are simply not throwing money away. They know what to focus on and what actually works in times of war. Thirdly, thanks to our domestic production, we have one of the best drones in the world today. One of the best, but only if you consider price quality, both the quantity and the production lines that we were able to build, supply chains, this logistics, etc. And they are very interested. They understand that today they are investing money in our drones, and later, tomorrow, we will be giving them these drones back. Tomorrow, I mean, after the war. And they are very positive about it. The Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, are all very interested. Right now, this is one of the strongest alliances, a partnership alliance with Ukraine. It's a really strong alliance. They are investing money in our domestic drone production. They are number one today. Now, after our recent agreements with Biden, the United States will be investing money into this. But as of today, this is a fact.
But they can provide us with assistance just like in the previous 2 years. Respect and gratitude for what they have delivered. We are looking at the pace of weapon transfers. 30% has been declared, and they are late, to be frank. When did we need the planes? Isn't it possible that they will only provide support just to maintain the forces, and without fearing that Russia will go further because there is Ukraine, there are those military people you speak of, and they will have the weapons of the Allies. But only so that you can stand firm.
I don't know what they will do next. I told you that. It seems to me that the countries are different, and they have different attitudes towards this war. And it is important not to lose this alliance. Ramstein, 50+ countries. This is a very important alliance, very important support. And even what you are saying, won't it be the case that they will just support us so that you support them? Honestly? And there are countries that approach it this way, to support Ukraine just for the sake of supporting. But thanks to this union, Ramstein, and so on, you have these countries. And there are countries that want Ukraine to win. Indeed, these are different countries. But today, most important is they are at the same table. They sit and help, but maybe among them, someone is helping out of necessity. That is also possible. They are against helping Ukraine, but for example, their society supports Ukraine, and they are forced to help. So honestly, what difference does it make to us why someone among them is helping us? For their own sake, for their own elections, due to society pressure on them? Or do they really want to help? Or is someone among them waiting for Ukraine to fail, as of today? What difference does it make to us? Why? We need to survive and win, and for that, we must not reduce the number of these countries. We need to fight for the interests of these countries, as there will be elections in the United States soon, and we do not know what will happen afterward. We will see. We are working to ensure that the assistance does not change, and we need not only for it to remain unchanged, but also to preserve it, and even better, to increase it.
You mentioned that we see the face of Russia, and every Ukrainian does not need an explanation of who the Russians are. However, presenting a victory plan, Russia is organizing a BRICS summit in Kazan, India, China, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey will come to Kazan. This is an economic union. We see sanctions are in place, and there are strikes on oil refineries. How can we destroy the Russian economy so that it does not continue to create such anti-Western coalitions at a time when seemingly all countries know who the enemy is, yet a huge number of countries are flocking to Russian Kazan?
BRICS is coming. BRICS helps Putin show the world, his own society, that Russia is not isolated. 20 countries have arrived, for example, because there will be BRICS Plus, as you correctly mentioned. The question of what level they will attend is a very important issue. I believe that partners should definitely work harder so that not all leaders come to meet Putin. I think this is important. Regarding the BRICS economic alliance, as you mentioned, it is essentially, in its essence and fundamentally, about Putin doing everything to offer the world his formula to end the war. And for someone to support his formula, to genuinely support and agree with it, he needs some kind of foundation. And he understands that there are no United States, no European Union, and in general, no Europe. He has significant questions regarding the Dazi space. Right. And the Arab countries, they are still divided. There are issues where they are united, but they are still divided. Therefore, he needed to find some platform. BRICS is a suitable platform for him. However, I believe that he will not focus on building economic relations and strengthening ties around Russia on this platform, but rather, most importantly, on his vision for how to end the war. His vision will be intricately linked to the economic achievements of other countries that are part of BRICS or BRICS Plus, those who will be present, and their collaborative efforts. This is one of the most sensitive topics. I believe that it is a problematic issue, and we have raised this issue with the White House, and I believe that, and what Russia is currently working on actively regarding the Secretary General in terms of the United Nations, Guterres, indeed went there. These are all unfortunate moments, such as bad signals, bad bells, and so on.
In fact, Russia is currently trying to organize its first peace summit.
Yes, there is, but they cannot hold a peace summit because they do not have as much support as there is in Ukraine, but they are making efforts. Let's have a conversation at the BRICS platform. But believe me, it will just be an informal, so to speak, informal dialogue about how we can end the war. In other words, they are dividing the world. They specifically want to split the unity of world leaders around Ukraine. This is what they are doing.
Thank you. There were questions about economic sanctions, how we can further damage the economy. What strategy do we have in this regard?
Sanctions need to be enforced. They must be enforced. The problem is that they are being circumvented. There are countries that allow for this circumvention. There are energy sanctions that could simply stop Russia's energy sector. Here, a union of United States, European Union, and we will not specifically mention some representatives from the Middle East. They may negotiate and significantly reduce Russia's energy profits. They have started talking about the economic aspects regarding reparations. Now, this statement that we can use blocked Russian assets raises the question of whether they will replace our demands for reparations from Russia. In any case, Ukraine will demand reparations. I don't think this will happen anytime soon. The most complex issue is the economy, but nonetheless, it is very important for us today. The 50 billion in frozen assets is crucial, and the G7 meeting under the Italian presidency is very important for us. I was in Brussels and we talked about this. We really want Hungary not to block certain steps, and then we will be able to move faster. Part of these 50 billion will be the European portion, which I think is approximately about 35 billion in total, as I recall. Both Ursula and 99% of EU leaders support this. Physically, we will be able to obtain it. These funds will be received in installments starting from the beginning of next year, as we discussed with the leadership of the EU, and they will be very helpful to us. But this is not a replacement for reparations. It is the use of a fair share of Russian assets. What can we spend them on? Here we fought. I believe that we have a fair understanding from our partners and a fair victory for Ukraine, that we can use this money. They will certainly be available to us so that we can use them for our domestic weapon production, where we have a significant deficit, as well as to assist people.
Please tell us, we're talking about the production of our weapons. We have done many segments in our broadcasts about the fact that, remember, there was a whole campaign that everyone could make a drone themselves and so on. And there are actually a lot of manufacturers who have made drones, and they are sitting in their warehouses with only a third being purchased. I understand this question may seem sacrilegious during wartime, but maybe they could be sold abroad to generate foreign currency, if the state cannot buy everything produced.
The state of Ukraine has already spent approximately 48 billion from the DSTZ budget and around 50 billion from the Ministry of Defense on domestic drone production this year, along with additional programs for combat units, military, and other related areas. About 20 billion, that is, it is already 120, and 108, somewhere around 120, 18, 20 billion. In addition, we have agreed with our partners, as I mentioned, that we have a strong alliance with the Nordic countries, and we have already received 750 million euros, which is about 30 billion. This is a reality. It is 150 billion that Ukraine has allocated for domestic production. We have been given a task, already have agreements in place. We expect to receive around $4 to $5 billion for our own production by the end of this year. That means it will be somewhere special with you, perhaps. It will be somewhere with you. 150, 200 billion hryvnia. In total, I believe the result will be 300, 350 billion for domestic drone production in 2024, which is a very serious result. That is how it will be. That will be the result. Now, as for all this money, it is mostly received by the private sector and state-owned enterprises. We are very happy that we have increased domestic production, that we have expanded production lines, and that we have increased such quantities. We are very happy. Yes, they are not delivering some drones where the Ministry of Defense has not signed contracts. But we must be fair. They have increased such production thanks to these very funds, domestic funds, not thanks to some other funds. Yes. As for the issue of experts, I believe that if the revenues to the Ministry of Defense are slow, then it is necessary to work with the management of the Ministry of Defense and others to expedite this. But if they don't have money, sometimes you have to wait a little. After all, we are at war. I understand that they have increased what needs to be sold there, but it seems to me that there is a priority. Now, there is a very serious moment regarding exports. I asked the Minister of Defense to think about what models could be. But I exclude, for example, I have already seen a couple of ideas. I exclude the export aspect. It is very dangerous. If we export to someone, what happens then, as it could be in Russia? First, the second story is that this should only be among the countries where we can export because they have helped you. The third point, even among those countries in the Ramstein group, there are countries that have given you money for drone production. And if we are talking specifically about these countries and they are buying for their own stockpiles, okay, then I have a question. What do you think if Denmark is giving 600 million itself? Giving 600 million for domestic drone production in Ukraine. Does it really want to take these drones for itself? Therefore, I am not opposed to developing something, but with all due respect to the countries of the Middle East and other countries, I do not believe that we have the right to export to those who have not helped us with weapons. The Ministry of Defense should develop proposals and expedite the process as much as possible with additional funds. I asked them to develop contracts at the meeting. There is a decision from the meeting that has been in place for a long time. I asked them and the Ministry of Industrial Policy to create contracts with our best companies that provide the exact product that is being used, and that, by the way, everyone wants to buy abroad, to offer them a contract for 3 to 5 years, such a long contract. Well, they need to develop it.
Recently, it has been 2 years since the actual presentation of your peace formula at the G20 summit in Bali. 2 years have passed, and many events have taken place during this time. Has your vision for ending the war changed? Has your approach to the possibility, to the space for negotiations with Russia changed during this time?
Thank you for the question. A complete detailed plan will be ready in November, as I mentioned. It will be ready without delays. Thematic conferences are taking place. All of them are ongoing, and 5 have already been held. The 5th one was parallel. Yesterday, I was grateful to France. I said this to the President, the 5th Nuclear Security Conference. It took place yesterday in France at the level of ministers, energy officials, and allies. There was a large representation. Countries' ministers attended. All was ready. This means there were thematic conferences on each of the points. In order for the first version of the plan to be ready, but comprehensive and detailed, they are carefully going through it. The last conference will be on the 30th. On the 30th and 31st, there will be 2 days in Canada. This will be a humanitarian point for the return of our deported children and the exchange of prisoners. A conference will be held in Canada from this point, and there will be representatives at the level of the NSA, justice ministers, Prime Minister Trudeau, and his government will all be present. This will be the last point, the last conference. After this, all points will be prepared, all documents will be gathered into one, this general plan, which is ready for any negotiations. Our vision, which is supported by dozens of countries, 100 countries, a large number of countries. After this, we will give this document to all partners who are ready and prepared for the upcoming next summit. And they should also pass it on to the Russian counterparts. And we will wait patiently for the appropriate and necessary feedback. In other words, we have completed this part of the work that we promised. Now, only various formats of negotiations can take place. However, the foundation for all of this has already been prepared. The only thing I wanted, besides this document, is to have a plan for victory, to strengthen Ukraine. And then we will be strong with the documents, with the army, and with an understanding of the future, where and in which alliances we will be. This is the desired model. I say again, I don't know how everything will happen, but we will follow this plan. For now, that's it. The desires of different partners vary from time to time, for various reasons. Once again, there are electoral and internal issues, as well as some other concerns regarding direct negotiations with the Russian Federation. Our opinion has not changed. We believe that there cannot be negotiations about us without us. Therefore, even such formats that certain partners start, like, I don't know, undermining. I can't find the right word. It's difficult to shoot, like demoners.
What's going on? Yes. In my opinion, Russia wants this very much, to see all leaders and partners divided. Why is this happening? And why could it be so? And what are the implications of this situation? And how might this affect the global political landscape? For example, a certain country is starting its dialogue with the Russian Federation at the level of development, technical level, then foreign ministers, and then at the level of leaders. In principle, this is how it happens. Someone else, also a leader in Europe, believes that if you started, and I started, then the third and fourth will follow. Why do they do this? Because within each country, society will ask, why is it happening there? And you are not doing it. You are also a leader in Europe. You are a great seven. Then it starts with the third, with the fourth. I believe this is an important model for Russia. Why? Because then there will be competition among these leaders, not with the Russians, not with us, but among themselves. Who among them will lead to the end of the war? And in this competition, we will lose our alliances and certainly lose respect for one another. Because when you want a very quick solution, when they compete, it will definitely be at the expense of Ukraine, not their own expense, but exclusively at the expense of Ukraine. That is why I believe this is dangerous. We will still try to maintain the model I am talking about. This does not mean that, as I mentioned to representatives of the G20 or countries in the global South, in China, Brazil, and Africa. The last time we spoke, there were our own ideas, there were our own formulas, it seems, but there are proposals. The last time we spoke with the president, Roma Fozoya, we talked to him. He said that we would like to see our proposals as well. And I said we are not against it. Indeed, we are ready to accept all your proposals. And where the points of your proposals are based on international law and the UN Charter, we are ready to include them in any plan. Why not? Please. A good opportunity in November is G20 meeting. There are all these representatives, all these countries. We once proposed our formula in Indonesia during a G20 meeting. In November, there will be a G20 in Brazil. Please, we can take their proposals and all of that. If it unites the world around one plan, I am for it.
You mentioned the Peace Summit. What will be the sign for us that we are ready for its conduct? And how should the next Peace Summit differ from the last one?
In principle, I believe I have already said more than enough about this. After all, Ukraine is a strong and great country that will be ready and present at the summit, together with representatives of the Russian Federation. If the main characteristic, if we come out of this summit with a result, in my opinion, we need a result that ends the war, the end of at least the hot phase of the war. That is, we need a result for Ukraine and for the people, but indeed an equitable result. It seems to me that these are the signs. It is desirable to be strong once again, either through a victory plan or through some form of enhanced internal support from the United States. Internal support in a united Ukrainian society is very difficult when our country is united, believe me. When voices from Ukraine go abroad to Europe and the United States, they convey that not everything is well with us, that something is not being supported in the right direction. This is very challenging, because it provides an argument. If I may be frank, you know how this happens. I have gone through these dialogues and again changed the opinion of one leader or another.
May I explain?
The summit should have documents with a strong position from Ukraine, with a detailed understanding of what we are bringing out of the summit, and with the majority of countries. And then...
This will have a result. So Andriy, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, said that we do not need a formal event. What we need are some pre-established decisions to be announced at the next summit, or are we still considering it as a platform for discussion and an opportunity to change my point of view? It seems to me that certain things should be done before it. I agree with the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Not just a protocol, but some positive actions regarding the approach to ending the war should be taken before the summit, where the next steps can be discussed. Yes, it can happen, but simply holding a declarative summit with 100 countries gathered, and for what? I don't want that at all. It seems to me that this is undesirable for us. We will then lose the opportunity for the next steps towards ending the war.
Thank you.
I want to return to the economic sphere, and you mentioned justice. And we are strong as long as we are strong. And our strength, as you mentioned, after the meeting at NATO headquarters, is that our strength is our army and it is our military personnel. But they need both funding and updates, as well as economic reservation. What is your attitude? And how important is it to implement this idea so that it is socially just and affects not only those who are not yet mobilized, but also those who are already mobilized? Because the law is the same for everyone.
The law is the same for everyone. If economic reservation is to be applied, fully or anew, then it should work that way. Economic reservation regarding strategic industries must be fair. And here, finding this justice is the task, honestly, of the Ministry of Economy, primarily the Prime Minister of Ukraine. He has this task. The models they showed me, honestly, I believe are not quite fair yet, because it is difficult to choose one profession without disregarding another. There should be other criteria. Profession, after all, is not the criterion. Regarding critical infrastructure and professions without which the military cannot simply survive in wartime, this has already been addressed. We understand that the defense sector is functioning and people there are reserved in one way or another, but key specialists, they are all working. That's a fact. But everything else is really a complicated issue, that it has not been implemented yet precisely because it is difficult to find this balance. The military is afraid because there will not be enough. And for this reason, I believe there will not be enough new forces. Business views it differently. If this happens, what will the criteria be? It shouldn't be just about business, where there are very high profits and strong players, but what about the medium and small ones? Therefore, it seems to me that there is currently no balance here. You can't just swing a saber like that.
Mobilization from the age of 18. Media outlets have reported that international partners are urging Ukraine on this issue. I would like to hear from you what information is available, whether there are prerequisites for lowering the mobilization age, and what needs to happen for this issue to be brought to Parliament for consideration.
Well, the partners would likely really like the age to be lowered. We have mobilization starting at 25 years old, and we do not currently see the need to introduce these changes. I believe that it is dangerous at the moment. There is a tool. There is a tool for this. Please, the Ministry of Defense has contracts. There is an opportunity to contract voluntarily. Indeed, any person under the age of 25 can act of their own will. The Ministry of Defense should offer special, let's say, special contracts, special conditions, and then a person, if they want to go there and serve in such a contract army, has the right to go and serve at any age, according to the current legislation. Well, for now, that's how it is.
You said that you are afraid of this issue because there may be an outflow of young people. Indeed, there is currently a trend where members of parliament mention different figures regarding how many young people left at the beginning of the school year. This is also a major challenge for Ukraine.
This is a significant and important challenge for our future. It is indeed a challenge regarding the outflow of people during wartime. Those who have the legal right can leave. In fact, however, there are currently no plans for mobilization starting at age 18, despite what some may say. Additionally, There is a lot of misinformation circulating, which is, quite frankly, a significant problem overall. Therefore, it must be noted that there are no such plans at this time.
You spoke about a fair outcome, the end of the war, and our victory. Perhaps we will have to sacrifice something. For us, the victory is the border of 91 and 02. Is there any compromise between these?
It's difficult to talk about, in any case. We cannot recognize the occupied territories as part of the Russian Federation, and this is one of the most challenging issues that exist. Because everyone clearly understands that what Putin did by incorporating some of our territories into the constitution is a very serious and undeniably significant problem. That is, he simply stole them, not just them. He temporarily occupied them. I am confident that this is a temporary occupation until Ukraine legally secures something. A serious moment. Life can be different. It is up to us, on our strength. It depends on the fatigue of partners, on desire, many things. But there is a historical perspective on this. Our land is in our constitution and in all international documents. She understood with clear boundaries. It can be different. It can be a status. But as long as Ukraine does not legally recognize certain territories, at any given moment, even one temporarily occupied village will not be recognized as Russian. It will remain Ukrainian.
An invitation to NATO, permission to strike Russia with long-range weapons and the protection of Ukrainian airspace by allies, including Romania and Poland. These issues, part of the victory plan, were long discussed and lack consensus. It does. Not help, it does. Not help. Arguments are ineffective. Russia continues to raise the bar for escalation. I was waiting for personal permission to strike Russia after the attack.
There is no mention of this in the plan. But again, you are outlining why you think this should change now. If we do not apply pressure, nothing will change. And honestly, I must emphasize that I believe that is fair. In our opinion, I return to the point that different countries have their own lives and opinions, and not everyone still understands that this war affects everyone. Some still believe that, yes, we greatly respect Ukraine, a strong nation that is justly fighting for its existence, but this is their war. There are countries that feel this way. We must, understand this. Sometimes you may not respect the opinion of a certain partner, but you have to understand it. Then it becomes easier. It's simply easier to understand what you can rely on and what is just fantasy. And that's why you asked about hitting Russia. Yes, that's why we demand something that will really strengthen us. As for hitting Russia, well, you know how it is. Yesterday, I believe I'm quite certain that something related to your question was at the press conference. Yesterday, I honestly said that I remember my dialogue about a patriot. And I remember how I was told, don't even think about it. There were many different things, different voices. It was different, and how it was in 16 and so on. I'm not saying that all of this helped us end the war. What helped us was to endure and preserve ourselves, our country, that's a fact. And so we must work every day as if it were the last day. Otherwise, it simply won't work. We need to work and push, push, push. Some changes in the policies of certain states due to elections can complicate these moments, getting to know each other again. It will have to be like that here. But nevertheless. Question about the enemy. What do you think could make Russia stop its aggression and move to negotiations today? And based on the information you receive, how do you assess their condition? And how successfully are we indeed able to finally break their desire to fight today? The state? Well, first of all, the economy. Due to its internal economy, Russia will not survive. The best. Other states did not support their energy resources, did not support their exports, simply banned them, or were able to take steps to reduce the price of energy resources. I believe that after this, within a year, Russia will be unable to fight at that level. Firstly, Russia can be stopped tomorrow. Honestly, China, India, as I told you, China, India, the United States, Saudi Arabia, I think can do this quickly. Just sit down and say, look at the situation. Yes, there will be no economy in your state. For the next 6 months, we will completely stop your energy sector. I have lowered the price on energy. In fact, the European Union is not going to have any exports from Russia. I say it won't happen because it continued and all my warriors turned away. It's not just like that. I understand we need to respect our neighbors and it's the right thing to do. But, sorry, our animal is not moving, while some animal from Russia is moving. Well, this is a strange story. I believe it is inadequate and is being transmitted. And so, if you take all of this seriously, if the serious countries I mentioned, which have influence over Russia, are strong, they are capable of stopping its economy, and without an economy, they zero. Because after that, they will only have nuclear weapons left. And those countries I mentioned will definitely not let him use them. Well, or actually that's a completely different story. If China indeed has the desire to end the war quickly, it is capable of doing so with these leaders. In the United States, there is a strong and undeniable desire. In India, I think they are more inclined, without a doubt, to end this war quickly. I think this is an important moment. Therefore, several countries are lacking, but from them, we are asking for only one thing: to help us end the war. Bring Russia to the negotiating table and diplomatically end the war with respect for the territorial integrity. Why is China not doing this? Well, I think that after it has a severely blocked economic European Union, that is a market for it, and that is a fact. What can the European Union do? Well, understanding that the European Union, compared to Russia, it is simply a giant because there are 600 million more people who are financially capable compared to the 140 million in the Russian Federation. But for this, the European Union needs the willingness to somehow come to an agreement with China. In principle, the game can indeed be resolved economically in one day if these players are really ready for it, if they are truly prepared to take the appropriate steps. And what are we doing about this, you ask? And what if some of these players do not have that desire? Well, there simply isn't any, for various reasons. Well, China is receiving cheap energy resources today.
So, do they need a long war or a short one? And Europe, understanding that this is on the European continent, has refused cheap energy resources. Even many of them were actually under pressure from rising prices. But, nevertheless, you stood firm. Not everyone. You see which countries are still against this or that direction, against the war. We need to stop now and return everything to Russia that was there. And look at the reasons why they are doing this. Everywhere there is money. Unfortunately, we must know the reality. Everywhere it is money. There is no morality in this. The moral of those countries that understand they will be losing due to sanctions is significant. And in all other countries, there is no morality, whether it is beneficial or not. I know countries that are not very large, but I know how the leaders of these countries have sometimes lost their status due to their support for Ukraine. We will talk when the war ends, and it will end eventually. We will discuss this very frankly. So who has made a greater contribution? And so when they talk about how to stop it, we have a formula. We cannot just propose populist formulas or simply any relevant steps. When you are in a strong, healthy state, clearly state, my formula is as follows. It is purely economic, so don't even write it down. Accordingly, economic form, point 1, point 2, point 3. I think that China can outline 3 points, after which Russia will understand that its economy will simply explode, how society will overthrow the Kremlin in a year. They were quite able to do it effortlessly with America, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil
What he is doing is trying to do more. Well, that is part of the answer. I believe they have various internal reasons to stop the economic sanctions, but we see the reaction of our partners as it is when we have victories on the front, and it makes it much easier for our diplomats to work with long-range missiles, specifically missiles. Have they calculated, because war is mathematics, what density the strikes on targets within Russia should have in order to be a real turning point? And can Russia then be stopped within what time frame on the front?
The third point regarding the containment package is designed exclusively for that. It is calculated that there is a target. There is a number of missiles, and there is a cost for this. And there is a corresponding number of targets, as well as a corresponding number of missiles. The specific number of targets, I would say, the specific number of missiles, the specific range, and the specific cost of this entire package. Moreover, when we talked about this in the White House, I said, and I still believe today, that Congress has already voted along with the contracts and bilateral agreements on security guarantees. With the leaders of other countries, there are 26 in total, but there are contracts where there is specific money. That is, all this money is already enough. We don't need new money. It's sufficient if everyone fulfills their obligations. It is enough to provide us with this package. That is, there is specific mathematics. As you said, there is specific money. In our opinion, the application of this package, if Russia does not sit down and stop the war, will lead to not just a weakening of their defense, but it will indeed fundamentally lead to a significant pause in the possibility of restoring that sector, their forces and combat capabilities. And then all this time you can either negotiate if they want, considering all possible outcomes and scenarios, or definitely repel them while maintaining a strategic approach. They will have a choice. Do you want to negotiate? Let's go. Don't you want to? Well, that's it. Because they will have no advantages in weapons or anything else at that moment for a long time. Here's the thing. That's why I considered this package to be preventive. That's why I thought that if they are not fools, and they will understand that if they do not sit down to negotiate, we will implement the package, and then there will be no point in negotiating with anyone, so they will talk. And for us, this is beneficial, not to lose people, not to lose time, not to lose this weapon.
We are now approaching the end, and I would like to ask a very human, down-to-earth question. Last night you were in Brussels, and today you are already in Kiev. Many Ukrainians are going through a difficult period because of the war. Some see a psychologist, some do not. What do you hold on to? I don't want to. Then what do you hold on to? What truly helps to indeed endure all of this, because in your place, few people would want to be right now, at this moment.
But I think that many people undoubtedly have their own very important and certainly not easy role indeed today. I believe that adequate people, normal people, and indeed decent people suffered during wartime, much worse than in peacetime. But we believe that this is our duty, and we all think, or at least I do, that we are fulfilling it. We are holding on, it seems to me, simply through human relationships. I hold on to this, truly and honestly. Indeed, there are children, and there is a wife, indeed. Thank God the parents are alive, so the children are too. And we communicated, saw each other, talked about something good. On this support, I saw a person. I indeed spend a significantly small amount of time outside, but actually, if you do see someone...
Well, we just greeted each other, which is already good. You can meet different people. This is what we are defending. This is democracy. You can meet various individuals, if Nataloshka has moved on to human emotional issues. Sometimes it seems to me that many people have a kind of deadlock mood. There is no consensus, they do not allow us to strike back, they do not provide long-range weapons, and here the Shahed drones are flying in. What else? Calm us down? The West? They will not tire of helping us?
We will not let them get tired. We do not have the right to do that. It is our duty. And yesterday, you know, everyone is worried about how the elections in the USA will end. And yesterday, it was very pleasant that the leaders of the European Union, the main leaders, I would indeed even say, from whom much depends, said we must indeed rely on Plan B. If, for example, the USA indeed changes its policy, we must expect that we will have to take on this burden ourselves. I think it was indeed the absolutely right signal, a very right signal. God willing. As you said, people are different. God willing. People will simply be accountable for their words through their actions. Thank you. Young people, we appreciate it. Thank you especially.